Welcome to McGuire on Wrestling.
Allow me to reintroduce myself.
With Mike McGuire.
Stand up, son. Let me take a good look at you.
This guy's a serious professional.
You know what I want to talk about?
Yeah.
Well, the professional wrestling. Do I have your attention now?
Done shilling. I'm done shilling, okay?
Let's get this show on the road.
I love professional wrestling.
Hello, we are back for another edition, episode 102 of McGuire on Wrestling. Thanks for being here this week. And thank you for either subscribing on the podcast feed or checking us out on the radio. If you listen on the radio, I'm going to tell you right now, you want to subscribe to the podcast feed because you get extra content there all the time. In fact, today's show is going to be extended on the podcast feed because we're going to tackle a perhaps controversial comment made by one of our contributors in Dave Meltzer, who rated one of the main event matches from this past weekend's WrestleMania as one of the worst matches of all time. All time! Really? To help us walk through every WrestleMania main event, and by that we mean last matches on the card, Stefan Bennett from one of the shows on the Celebrate Wrestling podcast feed, Legends and Champions, he's going to join me, and we're going to go through every single WrestleMania main event. And remember, there's more than 40 other ones now because we've had a bunch of two-night WrestleManias. So, yeah, it's going to be one of those days. Nevertheless, we're going to go through the entire list and say whether or not we think these matches were better or worse than Cody Rhodes versus John Cena at WrestleMania 41. Dave Meltzer will be on the show today to clarify his comments a little more as well. Plus, we're going to take a bit of a deep dive into WWE's announcement that they are acquiring AAA, Lucha Libre AAA, which is, of course, one of the leading lucha promotions in Mexico, right behind CMLL. And it's one of those situations where, if I were to compare it to anything, I'd probably call it right now these days the AEW to CMLL's WWE. Like, CMLL has been around forever. They've been playing Arena Mexico forever. But AAA has been trying to do things differently, which is often what we hear about AEW. So really, we're going to hear from Dave and get his thoughts on that, talking not just about the purchase and what that means, but how it could affect Lucha Libre Mexican wrestling as a whole. Let's face it, an American company now owns it, but they're also partnered with a Mexican company. So we'll see how much the influence he thinks is going to come through there. Want to thank you for being here. Last week was crazy. As you may have heard me talk about, I was taking on the role of in-game announcer as well as trying to watch WrestleMania and trying to get through a bunch of other things. So we gave you a bonus show last week. But I do want to give a big shout out to the Lethbridge Hurricanes of the Western Hockey League, the team that I work for, making it to round 3. We defeated the Calgary Hitmen, which was not foreseen, according to the quote-unquote experts. You know what I mean? These sports analysts and everything else. I did, humble brag, I did watch the final game, Game 7, between the Hurricanes and the Hitmen, with all my gall, sitting there in my Hurricanes jersey next to the Hitman for pretty much the whole game. And we talked about a bunch of things, some of which I'm going to keep to myself because it's the way it is. Other of which wasn't that interesting, to be honest. And then I did share one little detail on the Celebrate Wrestling Facebook page, which if you're not following yet, you should. You really, really should. We have tons of great conversation there. You find out when all the shows are coming up. People submit their stuff from around the world as well. And the best part is we don't allow jerks to stick around. So if you're one of those people that just likes to pick fights on the internet, you won't last long in the Celebrate Wrestling Facebook page. However, if you just like talking about wrestling and having decent conversation about it, everybody doesn't have to agree either. That's the one thing about this. You don't have to like what I like or like what Joe likes or Andy or the ACT guys or Stefan or anybody. You can vouch for whatever you like, but what we don't let you do is try and make other people feel like garbage for liking or not liking something. Because honestly, why? Why? Does it make you better? Does it make you bigger? No, it doesn't do anything. It just annoys people and gets people worked up about something that doesn't really matter that much in the grand scheme of things. Yes, there's millions of dollars on the line, billions of dollars on the line, but it's not our dollars. Our dollars go into it, and you like what you like. You know what? You might like a different kind of sandwich than I do. You might like sandwiches more than I do. I don't know. But why get into just such heated, stupid arguments about it? Trying to land on the, quote, right side of history about a predetermined sporting event is, it just is what it is. It's ludicrous. It's absolutely ludicrous. If you're listening in Canada, without picking a single side in this entire thing, I do want to encourage you, if you're listening on the radio, to get out and vote if you haven't yet today. If you're on one of our radio stations where the polls are still open, then please consider going and doing that. I don't care who you vote for. I just care that you get out there and do it. And last but not least, the Celebrate Wrestling and GWO t-shirts. There's the lowest special, which I named after my mom because her favorite color is blue. So it's the blue on blue shirt, as well as the return of the GWO logo shirt are up now on the Facebook page. You can save $5 and get a free sticker with your order. Or if you just feel like wasting $5 and pre-ordering on the website, you can do that too, celebratewrestling.com. But please, direct message me any way you can if you have any questions, McGuireShow@yahoo.com. Coming up this week, a WWE superstar is contending for an NWA title. Also, we dive deep into The Rock's comments this week after WrestleMania and go through the list of every main event in WrestleMania history to see if John Cena versus Cody Rhodes was really that bad. Dave Meltzer is here, but first, let's go through some of the biggest stories of the week. It is the 5 Count.
You want to hear the breaking news?
The newest member of the WCW broadcasting. Hey, you made it to the big leagues, buddy.
Listen, baby.
Steve McMichael.
Look at this venue here. This place is apropos, and that don't mean you're digging around in the dirt with farm implements, baby. This means this is a championship place to showcase championship athletes.
We start with the somber news of the passing of Steve Mongo McMichael, the former Chicago Bears great, as well as once WCW United States champion, passed away earlier this week at the age of 67 after a long battle with ALS. Now, Mongo is remembered actually coming into the wrestling business as a commentator, first making his debut, like you just heard a few moments ago, on the first episode of WCW Monday Nitro after a successful stint doing that in the build-up to Lawrence Taylor versus Bam Bam Bigelow in the World Wrestling Federation before WrestleMania 11. Mongo would go on to be expected to have one match, which he trained for, but somehow ended up on the road and even becoming a champion and a member of the Four Horsemen. As a defensive tackle, McMichael helped lead the Chicago Bears to a Super Bowl championship in 1986 and would end his career with 95 career sacks. Last year, McMichael was inducted into the Professional Football Hall of Fame, and back in 2019 had this to say as he was inducted into the Gridiron Greats Hall of Fame.
I don't care how old you are or my contemporaries, because it is your lot in life to be a mentor to the next generation.
Well, speaking of mentors, we knew that Natalya from WWE was going to be a part of the NWA Crockett Cup event coming up later on in May. However, now we found out what she's going to be doing. She'll actually be vying for the NWA Women's Championship against current champion Kenzie Page. The Crockett Cup takes place May 17th in Philadelphia in the former ECW Arena, the 2300. As we're producing today's show, TNA Rebellion was about to kick off in Los Angeles to a sold-out crowd. The card featured Joe Hendry against NXT's Ethan Page and Frankie Kazarian. Also, Masha Slamovich against Tessa Blanchard. Steve Macklin versus Eric Young for the new International Championship. An Ultimate X match featuring Moose, Hijo del Vikingo, Navarro versus Sidney Akeem versus Leon Slater, and Matt Cardona, and many other matches. We'll talk about it more next week here on the show. Speaking of Canadian shows, Maple Leaf Pro Wrestling is reaching out to any Maple Leaf Wrestling alumni throughout the decades to see if they want to be a part of the historic event coming up May 10th as they return to the former Maple Leaf Gardens. Now, in addition to a new Canadian champion being determined in a 20-man championship gauntlet match, you're also going to have NWA champion Tom Latimer, as well as returning to Maple Leaf Pro Wrestling, friend of the show, Rohan Raja, will be defending his PWA Champions Grail. Our own Joe Aguinaldo is set to go to that show again. It happens May the 10th in Toronto. And after making his WrestleMania debut, TNA World Champion Joe Hendry was said to have one of the top-selling shirts out of all WrestleMania weekend, even though it didn't debut until his appearance at Mania. Now, the shirt has since gone back on sale at WWE Shop. However, showing up in the top 10 during a WrestleMania weekend is no small feat, especially when one of your top leaders is John Cena. No word yet, obviously, what WWE plans to do, if anything, with Joe Hendry in the future. But at this point now, it just seems to be a matter of time. Oh, and while we're here, they are selling replica busts of Bret Hart and Steve Austin from their Immortal Moment match. That, of course, was honored at the WWE Hall of Fame in the 9,000-hour-long ceremony. Anyway, retail price on that, in case you're curious, is just shy of $2,500 US. But hey, they ship it for free, except to Canada. Still to come, Stefan Bennett from Legends and Champions and I go through every WrestleMania main event to see which were better or worse than Cody versus Cena from WrestleMania 41. And here to defend his comment that Cena-Cody match was one of the worst WrestleMania main events of all time, Dave Meltzer from the Wrestling Observer is next. Thank you so much for being here.
This is McGuire on Wrestling.
Legends and Champions is your weekly fix to go old school, looking at the classic world of professional wrestling. From Hulk Hogan to the Hitman Bret Hart to the Icon Sting to the total package Lex Luger, we have it all each and every week on Legends and Champions, part of the Celebrate Wrestling Network, and it's available on a Wednesday with me, Andy Evans. See you there.
It's time for the Wrestling Observer Insider with Dave Meltzer, McGuire on Wrestling.
Well, of course, he was busy WrestleMania week, as we all were for one reason or another. But nevertheless, Dave Meltzer, before we get to WrestleMania, a big announcement made before WrestleMania. I really want to talk to you about this because there's a lot of fans that are even hearing about AAA for the first time ever because they don't know much about Lucha Libre. I myself, I've told you the story. I think when I went to Mexico, I ended up making an independent Mexican wrestling show happen with some local guys on the beach. But I really wanted to go to a AAA show or CMLL while I was down there. And of course, the closest one to me was like in Guadalajara, which was 8 hours away. But so I never got to see it live just yet. But WWE now owns AAA. What does this mean for the landscape of Lucha Libre and for pro wrestling in general for fans that don't have any idea what this is?
Man, it's really hard to say. Everyone's trying to digest it. They don't own it yet, but they will own it in a couple months. And they partner with a group called Philippe. And I still don't really understand the partnership. I mean, I kind of know it. I was aware of it going in. I was aware of things that were happening. I was not aware of the day it was going to be announced. I was surprised. Most people feel this announcement and the announcement of the shows in Guadalajara and Los Angeles were a direct response to the AEW announcement of going to Arena Mexico, because it came right after. And, it's wrestling. I don't believe in coincidences, but the talks were going on. The deal is expected to be finalized in Q3 this year. So they're going to own it. They're going to run it. And what that means is, it's hard to say. I mean, it's like they owned NXT UK, and there have been ECW. There have been a lot of things that they owned, and that didn't work out. And this one may, and it may not. And they don't really know. They don't really know the scene in Mexico well. Mexico is a really different country. But I think that they want to expand the brand to the United States, have their own Lucha group, that it's another company they can sell rights to, which means they have to upgrade the production of the TV. And then the thing is are they going to start rating talent? And my gut is they will, because and at that point it becomes very interesting because, CMLL has already countered. They had a show last Friday and they have a new slogan, which is, as long as Arena Mexico is alive, Lucha Libre is alive. And you know what that's a shot at.
Right.
People basically saying that, WWE is going to, kill Lucha Libre. They, of course, say that we're not going to do it at all. We want to do traditional Lucha Libre, which right then everyone who's a fan of Lucha Libre goes, AAA was never traditional Lucha Libre. AAA was kind of a vision of the original vision was Pena, but later it became the vision of Conan and Dorian Rodon. And it was a lot of ECW, a lot of Russo style, WCW and WWF, Attitude Era WWF. And I'm not knocking it. It's just what it was. It's not, traditional Lucha Libre at all, which even CMLL, which is the closest to traditional Lucha Libre, it's nothing like everywhere. It's nothing like it was 20 years ago. It's just a different animal. It's a more high flying and everything. But I mean, there's certain traditions that CMLL has that AAA doesn't have. But like what's going to happen there, it's impossible to say. I think that there's more of a chance of success long-term now. I think that if it had been the Vince WWE that was buying it, I would tell you that the odds were it was going to fail.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that I would say that here. Now it's like from the AAA side and the talent side, it's like there's going to be more money pumped in. So it's positive, because AAA was having trouble. They were not a thriving company or anything like that. They were making major cutbacks. I mean, like their production of their big Triple Mania shows on Triller in the United States was just terrible. You never got the feel of how exciting it was because they muffled the crowd noise for a variety of reasons, and they used the announcers from their homes, in the United States. So you're just, and I would tell them, I go like, you got to get those announcers there live because we're missing the whole element of Mexican wrestling, which is the crowd response. We don't get it. And they didn't, they didn't have the budget to do that. I know that people fought for it, but the budget was what the budget was.
If I can just chop in on that here, I listened to Conan's podcast because he talked about it, and obviously he's been, like you said, a big part of AAA for years now. He said the biggest problem wasn't their talent, it wasn't their booking, is what they didn't have any money. So, for example, they said in WWE that if you put all of our TVs together for 1 year, it's not as much as they spend on one TV in the United States. Now they're working with WWE, and so their show will look a lot better. They're going to be able to work with their talent and now with money.
Yeah. Their budget was like there were people that they had access to that they couldn't afford, basically, because they had a low budget. I remember like when they stopped using Roosh, I was basically told like it's 25% of our talent budget if we just book him for one match. Right. So it's like they just couldn't really afford it. I mean, I guess Alberto comes at a favorable price because they're building everything around him. And that becomes an interesting one. Does WWE want a company built around Alberto?
That's my next question, because there were some false reports going out that he was already released, and like WWE doesn't even own the company yet, so nothing's been talked about there. But
yeah, and he's the world champion. Hopefully, WWE with their own company will have guys do jobs on the way out, unlike with the other companies when they take guys and they don't do jobs on the way out. They don't drop titles. I mean, not even do jobs, it's drop titles on the way out. There's like the Jeff Cobb thing with New Japan that just happened, which is the latest in a run of many. It's just like, this company they're high and mighty and when they do something, I mean, obviously they're partnering with TNA and that partnership's working, but for other companies that are not their partners, when they sign their talent, it's not like they go, hey, do business on the way out, just be professional. Obviously, they don't say that because nobody's doing it.
Well, and again, they might have the advantage where Mexican fans, obviously, that follow it a lot closer than a lot of the rest of North America goes. I mean, the WWE kind of has that advantage of unfamiliarity to new eyes, so maybe they do something of stripping titles and starting fresh, but I think overall that would probably be the first damaging shot, wouldn't it?
I don't think that they would do that. It'll be interesting to see if they want the wrestlers to work on the left side rather than the right side. If they want a more Americanized style in ring, if that's their feel. Once they're in control, I think right now it's business as usual, and what kind of budget they're going to give them. In the end, they're going to have to make money, and they're going to be disappointed. I think WWE is going to be disappointed with how much money can really be made in Mexico. I think that from a AAA standpoint, what they've always wanted was American exposure, and the idea that we can bring Lucha Libre as a different form than WWE to the Latin part of the United States, and people, who are not Latin, who just kind of like Lucha Libre, and we can bring that to the United States, and that's where they can make money. And AAA's never been able to do that since the early 90s when they were able to do it. when they had incredible talent. And if they could do it now, I mean, it's a harder market now. I mean, in the early 90s, wrestling in general was down. So really exciting wrestling that was ahead of the curve did pretty well. But right now, wrestling is very, very hot, but it's WWE that's hot. It's not, other companies aren't hot,
Does this turn into, we have the WWE NXT AAA Worlds Collide show. Does this turn into a vehicle for El Grande Americano to become a top heel over there to try and bring over some of the WWE eyes?
I don't know if that's going to happen, but I know that Conan would want that to happen. Yeah, I think that they love Grande Americano as with the idea of that idea as a top heel. They would love Dominic Mysterio, who's never been in AAA. They would love to get Pentagon and Phoenix and Ray back, obviously, for big shows. So we'll have to see like what WWE's, what the WWE mindset is on this. At first, I'm sure they're going to put a lot of resources into it, and then as time goes on, like everything, we'll see, how profitable it is and if they lose interest. I mean, everything, every company, when you start with something like this, you're always gung-ho at first. And then after a while, it's not the new toy anymore. And then sometimes it languishes. I think the key is WWE's ability to sell another product. Like if they go to Netflix and go, hey, give us $50 million a year and we'll give you a weekly Lucha Libre show for an hour or 2 hours from Mexico. And if Netflix says sure, then it's like they're home free. They'll be great.
Yeah, or maybe it even becomes a regional distribution thing to start, because they can do that with shows too. Like they do that with Canadian shows up here, where they buy so many Canadian shows that only stream in Canada and stuff like that. So anything's possible, I suppose, as we move forward. But I'm excited. I'm strongly considering, if I can swing it, heading down to that Worlds Collide show. Which I know
there's two pay-per-views that day and right next to each other. So
that's the other thing too, right? Money in the Bank's right.
Money in the Bank's right there, right afterwards. Yeah. So it's like it's interesting that they did that. I mean, one of the things is by offering dual tickets, they're guaranteed that the super hardcore WWE fans, to get the best tickets for Money in the Bank, have to buy tickets for Worlds Collide. So therefore, you're going to get a couple thousand tickets for Worlds Collide from people who may, under other circumstances, not buy tickets. So it's guaranteed a more successful show than if they just had thrown it in Los Angeles cold, with no other show right on the same day.
Well, I just like to remind folks then that limited T-shirts are available now at CelebrateWrestling.com. In the meantime, Dave, let's go back to WrestleMania itself here. I don't think we need to go match by match on this, but there were some comments that you made in the week that everybody globbed onto. So I know you've talked about it a bit, but I wanted to get it here because you and I tend to have different conversations about things sometimes. Not that you change your point, but just sometimes we come up with different questions here. And that is quoting you saying that John Cena versus Cody Rhodes may have been one of the worst WrestleMania main events.
I thought it was one of the worst. Yeah, not the worst. We went through and I could come up with 5 or 10 that were worse, but I thought like John's work was disappointing. Thought the finish was terrible. I mean, like I know my feedback. I mean, it's like the poll, man. Like that ran away with worst match. So. And that's on a show that had some matches that weren't that great. Although there were actually more bad matches on the Saturday show. But I didn't. I thought, the Travis Scott without Dwayne Johnson, that was kind of silly. That one spot with Cody with the belt was awful. I mean, we'll see what damage it does to Cody. I mean, right now I don't know yet. I mean, Cena's kind of getting a mixed reaction, but he always was. They're moving to Cena and Orton. So it's a question of like, what happens to Cody? I didn't think they did Cody any favors in so many ways with that finish, this finishing sequence in particular. Match itself. But I thought like, John in the match just wasn't that good. It just, aside from doing 4 attitude adjustments, it felt like everything he did was off. And I know he always did his spots really loud, but it was, I guess now, because it's been so many years, it's a lot more noticeable. But he's older, and that's the problem. He's 48 years old, and some people are still great at 48, but John Cena's, he's a superstar. He has the aura of a superstar. But as far as in the ring, he's not, when you think back at like the match with Austin Theory and some of these other matches for years when he's come back, it really hasn't been that good, but you don't really notice it because they were prelim matches. But when you're in a main event, you really notice it.
Dave, do you agree or disagree with the, I almost want to go conspiracy theory that The Rock not showing up was his way of getting back to not having the Rock Roman match at WrestleMania 40?
No, I don't. No, I don't believe that at all. I mean, why he decided not to come is a really, he always said he wasn't coming, but nobody believed it. And he did always say it. But, even I, was told a dozen times, that he's not scheduled, he's not coming. But of course he could come on the day of the show. And I just figured 60,000 people and it's WrestleMania and he's going to show up and do something because that's just how he is. Especially since it's going to do a record gate, and he's very into record gates. That's just from his growing up as son of a wrestler. But, he, as far as why not, I mean, he's probably the only one who knows. And if you were to ask him, he's probably going to give you the answer he gave on Pat McAfee, which is just that, like, they didn't need me. I didn't want to overshadow them, which is, I don't know. I don't know what the reason was. I mean, there's all kinds of, like 28 years ago, him and Triple H had real issues. Triple H tried to bury him. It's all true and all that. It's 28 years ago. I'd like to think that at this stage of both of their lives, where they both ended up being major winners, and Triple H did not, ruin Dwayne's life.
Anything but.
Dwayne has made it hard for Triple H because he's not autonomous, because Dwayne can come in and overrule anything. And that's just the nature of the game. It's a weird dynamic, but I don't know. I don't even know that played into it because, again, back in August, he'd already said in August he wasn't doing the show. It's just that nobody believed him. And to his non-credit, when I wrote that he was going to wrestle on the show, which got misinterpreted by people saying I said he wasn't going to be at the show, and he just goes, "That's all bull." And in fact, in the end, he wasn't at the show. But I never thought he wasn't going to be at the show. It was always, I thought he was not going to do a main event match at the show. And that never really changed because all the, you have to commit to that. And then once the Netflix thing came and he blew off Cody and acted like they were buddies, it's like, he's not interested in doing a match this year because it takes a lot of work. He's not going to go in there half-assed like John did, and go out there and do an average match. And the other alternative, which was, Rock and Roman, which he always wanted to do, I could see, certain things that were going on with Roman that were just not leading in that direction, especially with Seth Rollins, and even Drew McIntyre didn't even end up in the match. I could see them building up stuff, and it's like they do not believe that Roman Reigns is wrestling The Rock. I mean, you could just see it in the booking.
Well, it was definitely interesting. I find it interesting that, correct me if I'm wrong here, Dave, but you're saying the guy that really under-delivered in this whole thing was Cena then?
Yeah, he just wasn't, yeah, I mean, he wasn't good. I thought his bumping was off. He can do, his signature spots he can do fine, but then to go 25 minutes, there's a lot of stalling, which is okay. I just don't feel the match ever really hit big. And also, again, the finish wasn't good. That's the other thing. I just thought it was so lame. I just thought it made Cody look so bad in that finish. And, but I also believe that spot is probably going to be, the spot where he wouldn't hit him with the belt is probably going to be a callback to a spot, in 6 months where Cody's got the belt and hits him and wins the title.
Right.
So, I understand why they did it. But I think they should have done a different spot because it's just like one of the problems with the build, I thought, was that they beat him down, blackened his eye, blah, blah, blah. And then he comes out and they're doing debating class as opposed to something physical. And I know they didn't want to do anything physical, hardly at all, other than, Cody giving him crossroads and he would just lay there. They didn't want physical back and forth, probably not because they don't want to risk the injury or something, or John's in the middle of movie scenes and something. So they probably couldn't do anything physical, but I thought that when the original angle is so physical, to not follow up with any physicality and also being so cordial with each other and just doing a debate over the love of the fans, I was not into that build at all. I thought that, if I watched the other one, it's like compared that to like Seth Rollins and Punk, they were in a different stratosphere.
You know, you make great points on all this stuff, and I look back even at when The Rock was really heavily into his Hollywood stuff and still coming back for matches. You know, we would see the physicality in the matches. We wouldn't see as much before, but we still saw more than what we got with John now. And maybe it's just a different world because
also different age.
Yeah, and insurance and stuff, and you know, you got a whole
stuff. Yeah,
production you got to worry about, and it's alarming to me, I guess, to hear anyone, I mean, especially you, who pays so much close attention to this stuff, say that, you know, Cena is the guy that underdelivered. And I'm not arguing with you. It's just, you know, it's just a weird thing to hear and say in this day and age when you talk about a John Cena. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Because it was worked hard, but you know, age catches up to everybody, and at different times. And 48's old, and the style of wrestling today is hard. You know, it's not like. But even in the past, you know, guys at that age were often pretty much done. You know, I mean, there's a lot of reasons why it's not, you know, between, you know, different training and different drugs and things like that compared to when I was a kid where a guy 48, I mean, you know, I mean, they were, for the most part, I mean, Luthez is the exception, were considered, they're just old and done. Now a lot of guys, I mean, look, there's guys that are, you know, Randy Orton's, what, 45-ish, and he's doing fine, and he's got lots of injuries, and he's doing fine. You know, it's Rey Mysterio is, you know, almost 50. No, he is 50. I mean, and he's, you know, I mean, he's hurt now, but he's out there, you know, every time he's on TV, he's good.
Yeah, well, Ray went through all that rehab and stem cell treatment on his knees and stuff and everything. So, I mean, he's definitely invested the time and energy to try and get more run out of himself, I guess. But I guess
there's a lot of money right now in wrestling.
Yeah,
a lot more than when Ray started.
Why wouldn't you go for it? Why wouldn't you go for it?
Yeah, you know, I mean, this is like his retirement. You know what I mean? It's like he can make a lot of money these next couple of years as long as he can go. Yeah.
We had MVP on the show a couple of weeks ago, and he even talked about the cash-in retirement tour will come at one point, and you know, these guys have got it figured out. All right, last thing on WrestleMania with Dave Meltzer here. We'll come back and talk a little bit of AAW next, but you know, going back to that Pat McAfee interview with The Rock, some people agreed with it, understood it, other people disagreed 100%. Is The Rock just saving face now for not showing up? Or did he need to be there?
I think he did that interview because there was so much heat on not showing up that he felt he needed to address it. And, you know, I mean, I'm not a good person to ask because, again, like when he wasn't there, it's kind of like, okay, he didn't come. And it's not like there's any reason, because I'll say, like, they never advertised him. He was under no obligation to be there. I know people are just like, but he you know, they just feel it's like he should have been there. And it's like, you know, the warning was there. They didn't even talk about him in the build. You know, I mean, they did everything they can to tell you, but I think everyone's like, yeah, they did it to surprise us. And I thought that too, but at the same time, I always thought, especially in the last 2 weeks, is like, you know, it's really stupid to go to WrestleMania and bring him in as a surprise when him being there means so much for casual people to watch the show. Mm-hmm. And I mean, his own story is that he wasn't going to Toronto either, but ticket sales were low. And, you know, they were slower than they expected. And he did bring in, you know, they had 7,000 tickets sold the last week, which is kind of unheard of. And I'm even skeptical if those were really sold because that number is awfully, awfully high for a 1 week, you know, last week before the show. That's like nothing I've ever seen in recent years. But maybe he does mean that much. You know, so it's like, but that was his thing. It's like, you know, he was going to do I knew he was going to do the first Netflix. I mean, that was clear. Just they needed him on that. But the Toronto was, you know, the only other sign, and he did that angle, and you know that, and basically, you know, I don't know how much he said some stuff, but I mean, you know, since the thing, I, you know, talked to a lot of people, and it's like, I mean, I knew a lot of it, but I didn't know all of it, and you know, the Cena thing was a last couple of days thing, you know, when Cody turned him down. I knew that Cody turned him down. They went to Cena. I didn't realize that the gist was it was Cena at the last couple of days. And then doing that angle, of course, I think, you know, was planned for WrestleMania, which was where that belt shot thing would have made way more sense as the turn because Cody doesn't do the belt shot because he has all this respect. Him not doing the belt shot after Cena had turned made no sense. If they had gone in there with the babyface program, and then, Cody's got the belt and he doesn't use it because he's got so much respect for Cena, and then Cena uses it and low blows him and uses it to win, that's a perfect finish if he'd never turned first. Once he turned, Cody not doing it made no sense. So you can see a lot of the stuff where the plan was for the turn to be at WrestleMania without The Rock. But The Rock was there, and Cena was the one who made the call on the turn literally that day, because the segment was totally changed. And, then they ended up doing what they did. But yeah, he was just supposed to be there and do a thing, where he would talk to, he would be out with Cody and Cody would turn him down, and that was that. Because it was going to be before the Rumble. It wasn't going to be after the Rumble. Then Cena wanted to do it, and it's like they put it after the Rumble. And, that changed everything. That changed the whole dynamic of Mania. And because he was involved in that actual turn, which was not the original idea until Mania, then it becomes kind of like, but why isn't he there? And it was like, why did he not? Why did they stop talking about him? And we did get that answer. He texted both of them and go, I'm not going to be at Mania. Don't talk about me because I'm not going to be in the angle. And they didn't talk about him hardly at all. They did the one reference late, but it was just a small reference.
Yeah. Well, again, right or wrong, that's the way it happened. So we just have to see what happens in the future here. Dave Meltzer from the Wrestling Observer. We only got a couple minutes left with him, so we're going to come back right after this and talk about AEW and what's coming up with them. Hang on.
This is McGuire on Wrestling.
CKXU-FM 88.3 in Lethbridge is Southern Alberta's true alternative radio station.
The cream of the crop. Nobody does it better.
Proudly carrying McGuire on Wrestling every week.
Yeah.
If you're looking for something different to listen to,
This is going to be a slobber knocker.
check out our NCRA award-winning lineup of programs or stream us anytime at ckxu.com.
Welcome back to McGuire on Wrestling.
Back with Dave Meltzer. We just talked a lot about The Rock, about WrestleMania, about AAA, and a bunch more. If you missed that, head to the podcast version of the show if you're listening on the radio. CelebrateWrestling.com is where you can find all those. But Dave, a couple big events on the way for AEW. Don't see a lot of news coming out of AEW these days, though. What's going on? Like, it seems kind of quiet over there.
Well, I mean, they got the pay-per-view, the Owen Hart Classic finish, for the pay-per-view in the May 25th in Glendale, Arizona. Chicago, they're going to do Moxley and Samoa Joe for the title. So I presume they'll really start hitting the pay-per-view hard right after that match, and which is late in the game because it's only 11 days before.
Yeah.
So it's they got a pay-per-view and they got to start really hitting it hard. But with that tournament, really, I guess after Wednesday, because it's Adam Page and Kyle Fletcher, whoever loses will then be free, and then they can run, fill out the card, because there's probably, if there's something with Adam Page, they couldn't even really push it hard until after he's eliminated. Or if it's with Fletcher, they can't push it hard until he's eliminated. Right. The women's side is already decided. It's going to be Mercedes and Jamie Hayter. And I got to think that leads to Mercedes and Toni Storm at All In, which is the biggest women's match they could do, so it makes sense. So, that's what they're going to Mexico, which is a really interesting deal. It's funny because they have a really big advance, for the Mexico City show, and people are going like, it's like this WWE thing's not going to work, and it's just like, man, look at history. Everybody in 1984 was still doing business when Vince expanded. It takes a couple, Arena Mexico ain't going down tomorrow.
Well, I was going to say, doesn't Arena Mexico usually sell out anyways? Like, that's a hot building. Like,
they sell out. They've been selling out some. I mean, it takes a really big show for them to sell out, but they did sell out on not this last Friday. I haven't seen the attendance for this last Friday, but the Friday before they did sell out.
Yeah, but I mean, like in that building particularly with CMLL, I don't know, and with AEW.
But it's a Friday, not a Wednesday, and the Friday sellouts are because of tourists, and we don't know, the tourist situation on a Wednesday. A lot of tourists go there on the weekends. So then they go to the Friday night matches. So it's right. It's a different thing. But yeah, it's and also the prices are much, much higher. than a usual Friday Arena Mexico. I mean, they're used to getting wrestling in that city, multiple times a week for a reasonably low price, and then they're getting a real high price one. But when WWE would come into Mexico City, they would charge high prices, and they would get them because it was WWE. And first time AEW, I think it's going to do real well, and I think there's interest in Omega and Will Ospreay for sure, because Will Ospreay's never worked Mexico City before.
Right.
So it'll be an interesting. I think it'll be a really good atmosphere. I'm kind of looking forward to that whole week in Mexico. They're gonna have big shows Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday, and Sunday that week.
I'm looking forward to the TV as well, because I think it'll be again just a different feel for AEW, which is always a good thing. I mean, WWE might have shot themselves in the foot by being in Europe for so many shows in a row before WrestleMania, because they come back to North America now and the shows seem kind of, but overall, I mean, I get what you're saying. It's just, I don't feel I'm wrong in saying that AEW needs to just start making some louder bangs again here. Like, I just don't.
It's hard during WrestleMania week. I mean, it really hurt them, I think, that, all the news was WWE. I mean, they put on, that week, they put on two of the best TV matches, but it's just TV matches. It's like Ospreay and Takeshita and Nick Wayne and Commander were fantastic matches, but it doesn't resonate because it's, there's just so many other things going on, mostly in Vegas, and they weren't in Vegas.
All right. Well, we'll catch up more on that as we continue, Dave, next week. But let's catch up with you. And obviously, tons of coverage in the Observer newsletter talking about Mania Week. What else can people read about?
Yeah, Mania Week. I probably got the most in-depth story on the sale, histories of AAA and what, different ways it can go down, and just the whole dynamic of what's going on in Mexico. We had a bit on Hisashi Shinma, who is one of the most influential people in really wrestling history. If you really look at, behind, one of the brains behind Ali Inoki, which is one of the biggest matches of all time. And just the boom of New Japan, the rise of Antonio Inoki. I mean, he was his business manager and promoter, and Antonio Inoki is one of the biggest stars there's ever been. Story in Black Terry was big, independent Mexican star that everybody knew, and great worker. And Steve Mongo McMichael, who passed away, did a story on him. And then, obviously Stand and Deliver and the AW in Mexico. I mean, it's really a lot of business news, a lot of business news. So it's a pretty big issue, pretty hard issue to do. Yeah.
There you have it. Dave Meltzer from the Wrestling Observer. WrestlingObserver.com, of course, is where you can find all his material, as well as Wrestling Observer Radio. Dave, appreciate catching up with you. We'll talk to you again soon.
Okay. Have a great week.
Coming up next, for those of you listening on the radio, you're going to get just a taste, but on the podcast, we go all the way through every WrestleMania main event and find out which ones were better and worse than Cena versus Cody Rhodes. That's on the way with Stefan Bennett.
This is McGuire on Wrestling.
The alternate commentary table, ACT, brought to you by the Celebrate Wrestling podcast feed. Listen, it's Mitch, it's Dimitri. We got this little pod thing that we do every single week where we talk about the week in wrestling and the way in which we do it from the other side of the railing, right, Mitch?
I like that.
We're coming at it because we love it, we hate it. The alternate commentary table, ACT. Download it anywhere where you're getting your podcasts. Cha-cha!
Welcome back to McGuire on Wrestling.
Well, earlier on, we talked to Dave Meltzer, and he gave his feelings as to why he thought it was one of the worst WrestleMania main events of all time, and that was, of course, Cody Rhodes against John Cena for the WWE Championship. However, I take the approach that there are plenty more that fit that category, and I would even say that, if anything, this was one of the middle-of-the-roadest main events in WrestleMania history. But here to counterpoint with me all the way from the other side of the dang world, Stefan Bennett in the UK. Okay, all I know is London, and even then I barely know where London is on the map. But where can you put us in relation to London, Stefan?
Probably about 45 minutes south of London.
Okay, so you're not that far out. All right.
Yeah.
Fair enough. All right, well, you metropolitan British man, you. First of all, I want to hear why you say it was one of the worst. Not the worst, but one of the worst.
Yeah, it definitely wasn't the worst. There are plenty others that can take that place in history. For me, it felt a very underwhelming match overall. It didn't have that big stage main event feel like the way the match was playing out for me, especially off the back of, a more epic and heavily contested main event from last year, and even WrestleMania 39 between Cody and Roman. For me, it just didn't have that feel. I just don't know what it was. It just lacked for me that real intensity. And obviously, I've made my feelings known about the finish. I didn't like the way the finish was. I thought the finish was very flat and very underwhelming.
Well, I'm going to come at you as a person who was at WrestleMania 18, where we all know that Rock and Hogan was the real main event. But the main event match was, in fact, Triple H versus Chris Jericho. A fine match. Everybody knew it was happening, and the crowd was mostly out of it. Does that not sound familiar to what we just saw in 41?
It does, and as much of a Triple H guy that I have been for many, many years, I have to agree that's not a match I often revisit. It's, to an extent, is fairly forgettable. It shouldn't have been, and I remember Chris Jericho quoting at one point, he said, I almost begged the WWE not to have Triple H and I as the main event because we shouldn't be following Rock Hogan. And I think in that particular time he was correct.
I think they both said it over time. They've both said it over time that they didn't want to go on last, right? So, okay, so on that note, and we need to keep our answers super short because we are going to go through about 40 of them, okay? You're just going to say, was Cena and Cody better or worse? Better or worse than each of the following? We're going to start at the very beginning. Of course, Hogan and Mr. T against Roddy Piper and Paul Orndorff.
Better.
Cena and Cody was better.
Yes.
Okay. I'll actually give you the worse, because on that one, I will say that this was the first. You can't beat the first. You can't beat the craziness that was around that match. Now, WrestleMania 2, Hulk Hogan against King Kong Bundy. Again,
I'm going to say Cena Cody better.
I will agree with that. With that. I thought there wasn't much steam in that one, even with the steel cage. Hulk Hogan defeats Andre the Giant. I mean, come on. WrestleMania 3.
Cody Cena better, but as a spectacle for what it was at the time, Hogan Andre was what it was. But I would say over as a wrestling main event match, Cena Cody better.
I'm supposed to be the positive guy here, but I'm going to say worse. Because, I mean, again, to me, the WrestleMania is the spectacle. That is the main event. This is exactly what we're arguing.
Yeah, that is very true.
This is exactly what we're saying, is that it didn't live up to the spectacle. So, I mean, when it comes to main event feel, it didn't get any bigger than Hogan and Andre.
Yeah. To be fair, if you put it from that perspective, Hogan, Andre better. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and I'm not like a pro Hogan guy, or I'm not trying to start any fires here, but I'm objectively okay. I'm interested in your thoughts on this one, so you can go a little longer than better or worse. But Macho Man Randy Savage defeats the $1 Million Man Ted DiBiase at WrestleMania 4.
Do you know? I'm going to say Cody Cena better.
I'm going to disagree. Okay. And I'm going to say this not to be contrarian. It's just more the fact of, again, the hype around it. It ushered in Macho Man as a world champion. Excuse me. So I think there was maybe a little bit more benefit to that because, I mean, let's face it, even giving Cena the record, does that transcend this though? Maybe. Yeah, that's a, you know what? I'll say this was better than Cena Cody, but not by much.
Because WrestleMania 4 was unique, wasn't it? Being a tournament.
Yeah. There were so many things with that one that were so different here. Mania 6, The Ultimate Warrior defeats Hulk Hogan. Oh, sorry, I skipped 5 here. Hogan versus Savage. The Mega Powers explode.
Hogan Savage better.
I'll give you that one. Mania 6, Warrior against Hulk Hogan.
Warrior Hogan better spectacle-wise, and, for what it was a huge deal. And it's going to be, I think, still more remembered.
It was supposed to be bigger, for sure. It was supposed to be the biggest thing to bring Warrior in. So I'm going to say, from a living up to the hype, better. Yes.
Yeah.
It was better than Cody Cena. All right. Hulk Hogan defeats Sergeant Slaughter. I'm going to say Cena and Cody was miles better than this.
Yeah. I mean, for those who may not have listened, Andy Evans and I covered WrestleMania 7 on Legends and Champions. Go and listen to that if you haven't.
Yeah.
We talk exactly why. But yes, keeping it short, Cody Cena much better.
WrestleMania 8. I don't remember this match. I should. But this is what was listed as the main event. Well, it was a dual main event.
Double main event, yeah.
Okay. Because the main event was listed as Hulk Hogan against Sid Justice. No titles on the line. But what's the match? Well, there's two matches for me that I remember from that show the most. If you're going for main events, then it's got to be Macho Flair. But for me, it's always going to be Bret and Roddy. I mean, I've got the turnbuckle pad from it here in my office.
Yeah, that's one of my all-time favorite matches of all time is Piper Bret.
Yeah. So, I mean, negating that, as listed as the final match, Hulk Hogan against Sid Justice here, where do we sit?
Cody Cena, much better.
I agree. Hulk Hogan, now this is interesting. WrestleMania 9, they're listing Hulk Hogan defeating Yokozuna as the main event. Okay, let's put the Bret Yoko match in there first of all. I will say that overall, the Cena Cody match was better because I felt that they could work better together. Bret just had to do a lot of laying on the mat and get his offense in when he could. So I will say the match, and this is very anti-me by putting anything over a Bret match, but I'm going to say that Cena Cody was better.
It was, for those exact reasons, absolutely.
And then Hogan against Yoko, I'll say it was way better. But anyway. WrestleMania 10. Last match, and this is what we're going by. Bret Hart beats Yokozuna.
I'm going to say Bret Yoko better because of ending that Yoko dominance, how significant it was. We both know what the best match of that night was, and we know what the second best match of that night was. The main event was neither of those two, but main event purposes, I'm going to go Yoko Bret for how significant that was at that time.
Okay, if you're just tuning in, this is McGuire on Wrestling. Stefan Bennett joining me from one of our shows on our podcast feed, Legends and Champions, over in the UK, and we are going after the feedback that WrestleMania 41's main event of John Cena against Cody Rhodes was, quote, one of the worst main events of all time. We've already found some that were considerably worse. And again, this is where, if anything, I'm going to say we put it into the mid area here of the main event list. But WrestleMania 11. Oh, I didn't give mine, by the way. I do think that, I think the story leading up to Bret winning the title saved this one versus the WrestleMania 9 match. So
that's why I mentioned the significance of it because of Yoko's dominance and that. Yeah, absolutely.
Because the match itself, again, was that same kind of match where Bret was laying on the canvas for 5 minutes after he won because, well, I know the story behind it, and I'm not going to go into detail unless he wants to talk about it. But anyway, bottom line is that I will put the Bret match over on that one, over Cena and Cody here. Okay, WrestleMania 11, the main event. Now, keep in mind, this is 1995. Lawrence Taylor defeats Bam Bam Bigelow. Your World Championship match was Shawn and Diesel.
Yeah.
Right? Bret was relegated to the mid-card against Bobby Backlund in the I Quit match. So, where do we sit here? LT versus Bam Bam, better or worse than Cena versus Cody?
Oh, much worse than Cena versus Cody. In fact, probably the worst main event of all time.
I agree. I don't know about worst of all time, but we'll see here as we go through the list.
WrestleMania-wise, I think.
Yeah, maybe. Maybe. Again, we haven't gone through the whole list yet, so. Shawn Michaels against Bret the Hitman Hart, the Iron Man match from WrestleMania 12. No doubt way better than most matches. Better than it should have been for an hour-long match. That's my opinion. Yours?
100%. Bret Shawn Iron Man match. Absolutely much better. Steamrolls over Cena Cody.
WrestleMania 13. The Undertaker defeats Psycho Sid. I will say worse.
It's worse, yes. Although I enjoy the match for what it is. They didn't have great chemistry, and I think that's what kind of let it down. So yeah, it was worse than Cena Cody.
But the Undertaker came back with gray gloves. WrestleMania 14. Stone Cold Steve Austin defeats Shawn Michaels. Now, from a technical standpoint, I mean, you got HBK in there, you got Steve Austin. Two great workers, different styles. But, big but, the hype around this match is what really has me going it over as better than Cena versus Cody.
Yeah.
The palpable tension between these two, you know, with Steve Austin tied in the ropes in Times Square and Shawn driving the belt in his face. The whole Mike Tyson involvement, who was like literally one of the most controversial human beings on earth at the time, and some would argue still to this day. Was it the right way to do it? Who knows? Like, ethically speaking, was it the most successful way to do it? Absolutely. So I put this one over Cena and Cody.
Again, I'm going to agree with you. I thought the build-up to that match is one of the best build-ups in history, in WWE WrestleMania history, and I give a lot of props to Shawn. You know, having that main event and all the work he did, knowing he was severely injured, which was supposed to be career-threatening, career-ending. So, you know, I give a props to that, and yeah, it was for me overall better than Cena Cody.
If you missed the Legends and Champions episode, go back into the podcast feed at CelebrateWrestling.com and find the episode for WrestleMania 2000, also known as WrestleMania 16. The main event, a McMahon in every corner, as Triple H defeated The Rock, Mick Foley, and The Big Show. You've given a ton of thoughts on this one in the episode already, but for those that may not have heard it, what was your take on this one?
I enjoyed it. It was fun. I have issues with it, i.e. how quick Big Show was eliminated, considering how significant he was from the Royal Rumble leading up with the whole he eliminated The Rock and he should have been the rightful winner. And obviously it being more about the McMahons than the actual the participants in that match. So for me, as much as I have a lot of love and I find this show great, I'm going to put Cody Cena over on this one and say that was better.
I agree, because you know what? I remember the McMahon in every corner, but I couldn't even remember all four of the participants off the top of my head. And that's saying something, because, I mean, they're all huge names. For some reason, I thought The Rock was already gone. And when you guys started talking about it, I was like, oh, yeah, he was still there. Okay, fine. And that would make no sense, because he would come back for WrestleMania 17, obviously Stone Cold Steve Austin against The Rock. You know, I got to put this one over because it was the first time the two, you know, it was 1 and 1A, and you could choose who was the bigger name at the time in that exact moment in that year of 2001. So I have to put this one over Cody Cena, but for, again, the spectacle reasons.
Yeah, I'm in agreement. It was obviously, you know, WrestleMania 17, arguably the best WrestleMania of all time, according to so many fans. It quite possibly is. It's debatable, but that main event was so good. I still wasn't overly keen with how the Austin-Vince alliance thing kind of went. But for me as a spectacle and the build up to that match, 100% better.
All right, we're starting to deviate from the plan here of just saying better or worse. So we're going to do this because we're only at 18 now, so and we have 40 total. So okay, WrestleMania 18. We talked about this a bit already, so I'm going to go ahead and say that Cena Cody was better.
Agreed.
Okay, WrestleMania 19. Brock Lesnar defeats Kurt Angle. Better or worse? I say, Brock was pretty big. Better.
Oh, better. It's one of my favorite WrestleMania matches.
WrestleMania 20, Chris Benoit defeats Triple H and Shawn Michaels. I will say better, but because of what it was at the time, being WrestleMania 20 and what they were trying to achieve with two, quote, wrestling champions.
Yeah, agree.
And that's a big asterisk, because, again, I don't want to go into the whole Benoit thing, but...
No, absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree with you on that one. Yeah.
Okay, Mania 21, Batista versus Triple H. I will say worse.
Worse.
Okay. WrestleMania 22, John Cena defeats Triple H. I will say worse.
I'm going to say
better. Or I will say this match is worse than Cody and Cena, I should say. I should explain.
Oh, right. Okay. No, I actually thought it was better.
Okay. We go to 23, John Cena defeats Shawn Michaels. I will say this was worse than Cody Cena.
Yeah.
Shawn felt like a placeholder.
Yeah, I think Cena and HBK had a better championship match on a episode of Raw that took place in London that went on for about 45 minutes. I actually thought that was better than their WrestleMania main event.
Were you at that show?
I was not at that show.
I was going to call you biased for a second, but that's okay. WrestleMania 24, The Undertaker defeats Edge. I will say Cena Cody was better.
I'm going to disagree. I actually loved this period with Taker WrestleMania main events. I'm going to say I thought Taker Edge was better.
They lit a damn woman on fire in the crowd. I'm just kidding, but allegedly. Anyway, WrestleMania that has nothing to do with my opinion. I just, I love Edge. I loved Undertaker a lot. I was a big fan of both those guys, but I can't put it above Cena Cody because of the magnitude of it. Triple H. Well, you know what? I take that back. And I take it back because they didn't talk about it much, but it was streak versus streak.
True.
So I'll give it that. That did have me compelled. Okay, Mania 25. Triple H, Randy Orton. Triple H wins. Better or worse than Cena Cody?
Worse.
I'm going to say worse as well. Felt a little insidey.
Yeah.
26. The Undertaker defeats Shawn Michaels. Wait a minute. This is the main event? No.
Yeah, I think it was, wasn't it? Because it was Shawn's retirement match.
Yeah, but it wasn't the last match.
Yes, it was. Yeah, I think it was because the World Heavyweight Championship match was Edge and Jericho, wasn't it?
Hold on.
I think
final match was it was too. It was Undertaker defeats Shawn Michaels. It was the last match. Okay. Yeah, all right. So Undertaker defeats Shawn Michaels. Shawn has to retire.
Yeah. Shawn Taker much better, and it's one of the best WrestleMania matches of all time.
Yeah,
although not as good as the predecessor.
Agreed. WrestleMania 27. The Miz defeats John Cena. The Rock would make an interference as host. Was this better or worse than Cena versus Cody?
A lot worse. In my opinion, one of the worst WrestleMania main events and one of the most forgettable ones. We only remember it because Miz mentions it every sort of 6 months.
I hate to say this. I agree, but I'm so close to better. Like, I'm so close to better than Cody because nobody saw The Rock turning on Cena. You know what I mean?
That is actually a very good point. And also, to be fair, I actually thought it was one of the best Miz matches at that time because that period of Miz's career I did enjoy. But for me, if I look at the overall significance, if you just take the Rock situation out of it, I would have said that it may potentially have been better. But the problem is if Rock and Cena had been once in a lifetime.
We're 22 minutes in, Stefan. Make it quick.
Yeah. If it hadn't ended up being twice in a lifetime, I may have actually said that was more significant. But I'm going to go Cody and Cena better.
All right. You know what? I'm actually flipping my vote. I'm going Miz John Cena better because of the outcome. Okay. The Rock defeats John Cena WrestleMania 28. Better or worse than Cody versus Cena?
Better.
It's better than Cody Cena.
Yeah.
I will say yes, same thing because of the surprise factor. So why not? WrestleMania 29. Now I could show bias in this and say that John Cena defeats The Rock was better than this one because I was there, but I'm actually going to say worse. It was worse than Cody Cena. Yeah, it was worse.
Yeah, I thought their match at 28 was better.
Everybody saw this one coming too, and as far as it got, and it was on my birthday too. Like, really, I should be cheering for this match a lot more. It was a fun moment, don't get me wrong. The Raw after, though, which you guys talked about this week, I'm sad I wasn't there for because I think Andy and I are going to do a thing talking about it because I was there, and I'll tell you right now, you guys said that it was an earlier WrestleMania, post-Raw WrestleMania that set the bar for this. No. Okay, WrestleMania 30. Daniel Bryan defeats Randy Orton and Batista. I will say better. The size of the crowd, the hype, everything else made it so. What do you think?
100% better.
Okay, so it's better than Cody Cena. This is McGuire on Wrestling. If you're just tuning in, Stefan Bennett from the UK joining me. We are fighting the argument here of which Mania main events were better or worse than Cody versus Cena. And that's because Dave Meltzer himself said, this is one of the worst WrestleMania main events of all time. So far, I think we found there are several that have been considerably worse. But let's continue. Seth Rollins defeats Brock Lesnar and Roman Reigns. This is where he cashed in. Made it a triple threat. That's where I say worst. It's worse than Cody Cena.
Yeah, nobody remembers, apart from the Suplex City bit, no one really remembers anything but Seth's cash-in part, the last moments of that match. So, yeah, I agree. It's worse than Cena Cody.
Don't get me wrong. The only thing we're going to remember from Cena Cody is Fiend. Oh, my. Okay, we go to WrestleMania 32. Roman Reigns defeating Triple H. Was this better or worse than Cody versus Cena?
Worse.
Worse. All right. You know what? I'll give you that. I'll say it was worse. WrestleMania 33. Roman Reigns defeats The Undertaker. Far worse.
Far worse, yeah.
However, again, I have to lean to impactful moments. Is ending the streak bigger than becoming a 17-time champion?
Well, he didn't end the streak, did he? Because Lesnar ended the streak at 30.
I guess, yeah. I guess that's what opened this up to it.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
so you know what?
Worse. Ended the streak, then, yeah.
You're right. You're right.
Yeah.
I totally forgot about that. That little moment. Okay, we go to WrestleMania 34, where Brock Lesnar defeats Roman Reigns. Better or worse than Cena Cody?
Worse.
I seem to remember liking this one. I think I'd have to go back and watch it.
It was one of the better ones because pretty much most of Lesnar matches were exactly the same for a period of time. It was just the same sort of stuff. It was one of the better ones, but it wasn't as good.
Okay, I'll go with that. It was worse than Cena Cody. Okay, WrestleMania 35. Tread lightly here, my friend. Becky Lynch defeats Ronda Rousey and Charlotte Flair, the first ever women's main event in WrestleMania history.
I'm going to go better than Cody Cena. If the only thing that almost throws me is because the botched finish, the well-discussed botched finish to the match. That's the only thing that kind of maybe puts me off. But to be fair, as the match, I actually enjoyed that match overall more. So I'm going to go with the
quote
match.
Botched finish.
Yeah.
Yes. It wasn't one person's plan at all to look like she was wriggling out at two. All right. Now we move into the interesting territory because this is where we start splitting into night one and night twos.
Yeah.
And we're going to do that after a quick break here. You're listening to McGuire on Wrestling. I'm Mike McGuire. That's Stefan Bennett. We are going through the list of WrestleMania main events to see which is better and which is worse than Cody versus Cena. More on the way. Welcome back to the show. Final segment. Stefan Bennett joining me from all the way in the UK as we are talking about some of the best and worst WrestleMania main events of all time based on the criticism that Cody versus Cena is, quote, one of the worst WrestleMania main events of all time from our regular show contributor, the one and only Dave Meltzer. All right, we have gotten up to WrestleMania 36. There's night ones and night twos here. So really, this almost doubles our list, literally. We start off with night one, the main event being listed, and this was when cinematic matches were a thing because thanks COVID, The Undertaker defeats AJ Styles in the graveyard match. This is hard to compare.
Yeah.
Because it was so cinematic, right? I think from what they had to deliver and how it lived up to the hype and how it actually over-delivered in a lot of ways, I think I got to give this one better than Cena Cody.
Yeah, and I'm in agreement. There's, for me, what they did with what they had to work with during that time, it was a mini movie. It was very well done, and I've got to agree.
And only because he would probably agree with this statement, I'm going to say Drew McIntyre defeating Brock Lesnar was probably worse than Cody Cena. I mean, he did again. And that's not an indictment of either guy. In this case, it was just such a screwed up time for all of us. It was just bad, and I felt for the guy. You know, when they're in the empty performance center, like it was just such a weird Mania overall. So, I mean, I'm going to say worse than Cody Cena just because of the elements around them. Nothing to do with the match.
It was, and I do think Drew will get his moment in front of the fans and not have it taken away 5 minutes later.
5 minutes?
Well, that's what happened last year. Well, that's what happened last year, wasn't it?
Felt like 5 seconds.
And he lost it 5 minutes later to Damian Priest cash-in. So
I know, it just felt like 5 seconds, literally. Like, it was just, you're the champ. No, you're not. Okay. So we move to night 1 of WrestleMania 37. Bianca Belair defeating Sasha Banks. Again, this was a pandemic era one. They had the limited attendance, but they were still in front of people. I mean, history making for so many ways. People still talk about that match today, though. I say not as much, which is a sad thing because of who's involved and what it meant. But I'm going to have to say it's probably worse.
It is worse, yeah. Bianca has had much better WrestleMania matches since.
All right, and then Roman Reigns stacks them, Edge and Daniel Bryan for night 2.
I'm going to say worse because a lot of people don't even talk about it that much, and I actually feel it was really underwhelming considering it would be both Edge and I think Daniel Bryan's final WrestleMania matches that they would have before they would depart.
It was definitely Danielson's.
Yeah.
WrestleMania 38. Oh, I'm going to say worse too. WrestleMania 38, night 1. Stone Cold Steve Austin defeats Kevin Owens. I will say this was way better than Cena Cody. This is way better than a lot of WrestleManias, period. It was such a good match.
Yeah.
Over-delivered in so many ways.
It did. I was there. So my opinion's not biased, but I was blown away by how good Austin performed that night. It turned out to be so much more than what we expected, and he delivered, and it was absolutely brilliant, and the place was absolutely electric. So it was way better. It was way better.
What I loved most about that match is you could tell Austin was being really trepidatious at first, about getting those first couple bumps in.
Yeah.
And then a switch flipped, and it was like, oh my gosh, that is Stone Cold Steve Austin, so in a lot of ways, it was great, and Owens got his moment. And I remember, and this isn't to knock AEW, but this was the talk of, well, Owens is going to go to AEW, and, oh, what has he done? He's doomed himself by staying with WWE. And then this happened. Sometimes we don't know it all, guys, okay?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
For the record, I never said he doomed himself. I'm a huge Owens fan, though. Huge Owens fan.
Same.
All right. Mania 38, night number 2. Roman Reigns defeats Brock Lesnar. This one I didn't mind as much. But it wasn't great, and I won't say it was better than Cody Cena.
In no way, shape, or form was it anywhere near as good as Cody versus Cena. Like, the people in the crowd that night were flat. A lot of people were commenting saying this match sucks. This is one of the dullest main events in a while. The feedback was not good amongst the people I was surrounded by. And I have to agree, it was very forgettable. The only take away was it was kind of almost the beginning of the long title reign as undisputed champion, because that's where Roman took Lesnar's WWE championship, and that's where it all really started. That was the only significance of it.
Yeah. I like I said, I still put Cody Cena better than this.
Yeah, it was. Overall. Yeah, it was.
Okay, night 2. Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn defeat the Usos. Oh no, sorry, this is WrestleMania 39, night 1.
Yeah.
What do you think? Better or worse?
Do you know what? Actually, I think I preferred the tag match. I think I actually preferred Zayn and Owens versus the Usos. I have to be honest.
I'm going to disagree. I'm going to think it was worse. I love Kevin. I love Sammy. I like the Usos. It didn't feel like it was there for me personally. But again, that's just me. So as far as magnitude goes for a quote main event, I will still put Cena Cody over that one. WrestleMania 39 Night 2, Roman Reigns defeats Cody Rhodes. This was controversial in some people's eyes. I remember seeing the footage of fans like getting irate in the crowd, like flipping off the ring and everything else.
Yeah.
I don't know. I always saw Cody not winning that one.
I was a little surprised, but I kind of saw the bigger picture. And I was like, 40th anniversary next year, maybe they're going to have something planned for that. And yeah, for me, I still thought the match was brilliant, and I still think it was better than Cody Cena.
I'll give you that. It was better than Cody Cena because the problem is because everybody was hinging on Cody. That's why. And that's not a problem, I mean, in the sense of a problem. That's what they would have to face against Cody Cena, whereas everybody kind of saw Cena taking it in this one. Nobody saw Cody losing this one. Well, a few of us did, but No. Okay, WrestleMania 40, Night 1. Roman Reigns and The Rock defeat Cody Rhodes and Seth freaking Rollins. Was this a better or worse main event than Cena versus Cody?
Better. I genuinely think it was better. Again, I was there for that one. The place was electric. It was. I think it was that added interest because of the stipulation. If Rock and Roman won, it would be Bloodline rules for the main event for the following night for the championship match. Everyone was invested in this match, it was. I thought it was a really enjoyable match. It delivered on what it needed to. As Seth and Cody, everyone looked really good in that match. To be fair, even The Rock to an extent. So yeah, I'm gonna go with that.
We're almost done. And for those of you listening on the podcast version, you've gotten the whole list as opposed to those of you on the radio because, those on the radio aren't hearing this part because we're well over time of our 1 hour time slot here. So we are going to wrap things up, though. WrestleMania 40, Night 2, Cody Rhodes defeats Roman Reigns. That is your main event. Cody Rhodes finally finishes the story, wins the championship. His mom's in the ring. People are crying. It's beautiful. Babies are being tossed in the air. Like, it's all just perfect, right? Like, I mean, obviously better than Cody Cena, but in a lot of ways, for the same reasons Cody Cena was being criticized, you could say that was the case for this match as well. Plus, like I've said numerous times, and because we have the time to, there were so many outside factors in this being WrestleMania 40. Which I think, if anything, let down people for 41 because they had so many legends run in and everything else, and it just got so stupid that even though it was all crazy, it all kind of worked out in our heads. And so I will say it was better overall. You agree or disagree?
Absolutely agree. It was phenomenal. That crazy final 10 minutes of the match where we had the run-ins, it was almost like my childhood. Well, I wouldn't say childhood because I would say my early 20s, a big chunk of my wrestling life flashed in front of me with the Cena coming out, The Rock being there, Taker coming. It was amazing, and it will never be forgotten. And I think the match as well felt like a real main event. As I said when I criticised the Cody Cena match, there was a lot of back and forth in Cody Roman, where Cody went through so much punishment and persevered. It didn't kind of happen so much in against Cena this year. So that, for me, is why it's so much better.
And we talked about it already in the WrestleMania wrap-up show, but one more time really quickly here. WrestleMania 41's Night 1 main event. Was it better than Night 2? CM Punk, Seth Rollins, and Roman Reigns. The double turn, well, triple turn, really, I guess, if you want to look at it that way. Of course, Seth Rollins being victorious. Better or worse?
I'm saying better because that main event delivered on what it was meant to do. It was really enjoyable, as predictable as it was. As you know, I called it. I just enjoyed it. I came away from WrestleMania weekend thinking I actually kind of preferred the triple threat over the title match. Sorry to say, but it is how I felt.
I will say better as well, if for nothing else than the fact it gave us the new term, Heyman Handy.
Heyman Handy. Love it. Absolutely love it.
Folks, we are completely out of time this week. Hope you enjoyed that. Again, leave your feedback. Join us at the Celebrate Wrestling Facebook page. That is where all the stuff happens, including a deal on those t-shirts that are still on pre-order. Had a few more orders come in this week, so thank you to everybody that did that. Thank you to Tips McGee. Thanks to Dave Drashiff and a bunch more who have sent orders in. Still time to get in there. And again, I was meeting with my guy at So Normal Print Shop here in Lethbridge, and we're very excited to get these shirts printed and off the mail to everybody. So thank you for supporting the show any way you can. CelebrateWrestling.com. Stefan Bennett, check him out on Legends and Champions midweek on the podcast feed. Of course, the ACT guys are there with you as well. And until next week, thanks for listening and letting me do what I do. Play safe, drive safe. See ya.
McGuire on Wrestling. Online and on the radio. Listen to the show Mondays at 4 p.m. Mountain Time at CKXU.com, wherever you get your podcasts, and at McGuireShow.com.